How your upbringing shapes your relationships. I think it hit me during my first serious crush. I noticed how my parents handled their relationship, and it made me realize I had certain expectations. I picked up their communication style and even how they showed affection, which shaped how I approached intimacy with others. Never seen my parents being romantic together. Maybe once. I learned mostly from romance anime. At least I won't be a violent pause. I learned that I'm not the type to go to someone who is crying and hug them. When I was a kid, my parents would roll their eyes and make me leave if I cried. I have this really weird robotic response to sadness. I have to leave the room or get away from crying people. I know it's weird. It's even more weird that I'm aware of it, but still can't bring myself to console a crying person other than my kids. Abusive upbringing means I don't trust anyone. Early 30s, after I got into a serious long-term relationship with my now wife. Before that, I had a lot of relationships, but they were almost always unbalanced, one like the other more. Chemistry was off in some way, etc. Once I started into a long relationship, I saw how healthy my parents were in showing affection and love to each other as well as their children. I also didn't realize how much of an exception they were compared to other parents. It helped me and my wife build a good relationship. I mean, I'm still 10 years in learning and making mistakes. She didn't have my experience with parents. And I think without my pushing we could have easily had terrible communication and other problems. I was super lucky with my parents. I grew up in foster care. I have always looked after myself. It affected me mentally to the point I don't know how to properly do stuff like friends and things. That's why I realized lately I am better off being the lone wolf that I am. I took French in secondary school, and part of the exam was having a conversation with the teacher about things we had seen in class. I think she asked me to talk about the book I had read and about Baudelaire. Anyway, she mentioned a theory that people tend to look for partners that resemble their parents. I don't know why it struck me that much, but I thought about it for the rest of the day. I kept thinking if the boy I had a massive crush on was similar to my dad. So I guess then. Realized when Mom yelled at Dad for not sharing fries. It hit me when I had to decide to be with women or be with men. Let me explain. My parents' relationship was a train wreck. My father was a womanizer and my mother was a simpleton. He beat her into oblivion and they divorced when I was 5. I wanted to assure my partner monogamy. When I was getting heavily involved with a woman, I asked myself the hard question: if an attractive man crossed my path, could I assure monogamy and not cheat? My answer was no. So rather than drag a woman through my infidelity, I decided that it would be better for everyone involved that I choose men over women, because if I met a guy and had a relationship with him, I would be monogamous. 5 years later, I met my husband and we were happily monogamous for 32 years. It hit me when I started dating and realized I was constantly seeking validation, which traced back to how affection was shown in my family only for achievements, never for just being me. My GF and I are growing into a couple dynamic very similar to my parents with obvious minor differences here and there. We are like a mini them. I don't see this as a bad thing and she doesn't either. My parents are great at communicating with each other and are very much in love, successful, and happy in their marriage and have been for 30 years. If anything, we aspire to be like them. Probably in my late teens or early 20s. It slowly started to hit me a year or so before my wife passed, and since then, sitting down and mentally sorting through our marriage and all the struggles, I've really seen how both of our upbringings affected our relationship. I also saw it again in my first relationship after her passing. I try to avoid commitment and I don't believe in unconditional love. I always feel like I have to prove my worth to deserve affection. My fiancé often asks me why I never get mad at her. I do occasionally. It's just she and I both grew up in households where being mad meant screaming and violence. I've worked hard to break off from my father and grandfather's methodology when it comes to fights with their wives. And the main thing I've realized while dating my fiancé is that staying calm in an argument solves it better than yelling 100 of the time. My ex told me I have very unusual views on monogamy. We were talking about getting serious and she thought I was insane for wanting to discuss contingencies. I just wanted to make it clear that I wouldn't be angry if she lapsed and it's something we could work through. Both our parents had issues with infidelity, but whereas for her she just blamed her dad and became your typical militant fuck cheaters just as bone a Reddit user, for me growing up it was everyone having to deal with infidelity. Even as an adult, both my siblings either cheated or got cheated on by their spouses, along with several sets of friends. I don't suffer delusions of being special or so much better than those other people. I'm also statistically literate, and we've got data on this going back to the middle of last century. The majority of long-term relationships have to deal with this shit. You hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Let me check RQ. This week actually. Huge. Creates attachment style, love language, communication skills, social skills. My parents never showed affection towards one another or me really, so it's something I still struggle with myself.